Now, you may have come across this article on CTV News recently. In the article, CTV tells us which neighborhoods in Ottawa were the big winners and the big losers when it comes to property values in 2022. Now, the data in the article is based on a report that concluded an extensive study of every single property sold in Ottawa in 2022 and which was provided to CTV by a third-party source. Now, I could tell you who that third-party source was, but I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to keep it a secret. In case you're wondering, however, the big winner when it comes to property values in 2022, according to this report, was CARP, where values apparently increased by a whopping 15.2%. After CARP, we had Nepean, Canada, followed by Orleans, followed by Stittsville, followed by Centertown. Now, the big loser in 2022, according to this report, was Manotick, where property values allegedly fell by 4.6%. Now, if you live in one of these neighborhoods and you're paying attention to the real estate market around you, chances are that what you're seeing doesn't quite line up with the claims that this study is making. I can tell you personally, I've received a number of messages from people who've seen this article and who were very confused by what was being reported. They're telling me, we're hearing that property values were down in 2022, yet this article is telling me that my neighborhood is way up, right? But when I'm seeing properties listed for sale, they're selling for less now than they were at the beginning of 2022, and in some cases less than they were in 2021. So like, how can values be up? I don't get it. And then we also have these real estate agents every now and then that are telling us that, no, actually property values were up in 2022, not down. So like, what's going on? So if you're confused, believe me when I tell you that you're not alone, but let me try to break it down for you. You see, what this report and this article are actually doing is that they're just calculating average sale prices in different neighborhoods over the course of an entire year. In and of itself, that's a pretty useless stat, but then they're mislabeling that stat as an increase or a decrease to property values. Stay with me. Let's take Orleans, for example. This report tells us that property values in Orleans increased by 7.1% in 2022. Now, the way they come to this conclusion is that they take the sale price of every single home sold in Orleans throughout all of 2022, and then they average it out. Then they take that average and they compare it to the very same average for 2021, and they see that the average for 2022 is 7.1% higher than it was in 2021. And so they come to the false conclusion that property values increased by 7.1% in 2022 in Orleans. So if you owned a property in Orleans at the beginning of 2022 and you read this report, you would come to the logical conclusion that your home today is worth about 7% more than it was on January 1st, 2022. However, unfortunately for you, that's almost certainly not the case because that's not how we calculate property values. So your property's value is defined as, quite simply, what someone would reasonably expect to pay for a property like yours today. It's based only on today's market, today's conditions. It doesn't matter one bit what someone might have been willing to pay for your property 3 or 4 months ago, 6 months ago, at the start of last year. Your property's value isn't based on some combination of what people would have been willing to pay for a home like yours at different points throughout the course of history. It's based only on what someone would reasonably expect to pay for a property like yours in the here and now. So here are two graphs that I pulled using the exact same MLS data that the CTV report was based on. The top graph shows you changes to the average selling price of a townhouse in Orleans for 2022. The bottom graph shows you the exact same thing, but for detached homes in Orleans in 2022. Right now, this is not an exact science, I'm still using averages, right? But when you look at these graphs, do they appear to show a 7% increase in property values to you, right? So if prices across the board finish the year lower than where they were at the start of the year, how can you tell me that values are up 7% on the year, right? You can't, because when you're calculating values or changes in values over the course of a month, a quarter, a year, there's only 2 data points that matter, right? Where values were at the start of the year and where they were at the end of the year. Everything that happened in between is irrelevant, and trying to use that data and to lump it into your calculation somehow really just amounts to some creative accounting. Now, one last thing on this, I chose to use Orleans townhomes and Orleans detached homes for this example, but really I could have just used all of Orleans. I could have used a different neighborhood. I could have cut the data up or segmented it in any which way, and the graph that it would have spat out would have looked more or less the same as the ones I just showed you. They would have indicated a clear downward trend in average selling price, and that's because property values at the end of the year in 2022 in Ottawa were lower than where they were at the start of the year. That's what tends to happen when interest rates triple in a 12-month period. All right, now to close this out, just in case you're still not totally getting what I'm putting down, and quite frankly, because I just love coming up with convoluted analogies, I'm gonna give you one that I think really illustrates how ridiculous the method used in this report to calculate values is. Okay, so here we go. Hope you can follow me through this analogy. Let's say that I wake up one day and I decide that I want to sell my car. Right? So I take my car down to the nearest car dealership and I ask the person working there, what would you pay for my car? They take a look at my car and they come back and they say, we would pay $20,000 for your car. Now I decide I'm not going to take them up on it. I need to sleep on it. So I drive the car back home. Next morning, I wake up and I decide, you know what? I am going to sell my car. And so I drive it back to that same dealership. Only this time, as I'm pulling into the dealership, I get T-boned, right? The car is destroyed. Now I'm fine. I walk away. And I walk into the dealership and I find the same person from the day before and I show them the heap of metal that used to be in my car and I say, what would you pay for my car? Person looks at it and they say, well, zero. I'm not gonna pay anything, it's scrap metal, it's not a car. And I say, great, so you're telling me then that the value of my car is $10,000. I'll take you up on your offer. They would look at me funny. What do you mean? I just told you we would pay zero for the car. And I say, well, no, but that's what you would pay today, but the value is based on an average of what you would have paid for it. I came in yesterday, it was 20,000, today is zero. The average is 10,000. So the value of my car is 10,000, right? That salesperson would look at me like I'm an idiot. And they would also look at me like I really don't understand how values work. And that's the same way I want you to think the next time you read one of these articles, and there will be a next time, trust me, that tells you that neighborhood X in Ottawa is the hot neighborhood for the first few months of the year, property values are up 23%, but the neighborhood Y is the worst neighborhood this year, right next to neighborhood X, same type of neighborhood, but for some reason, property values are down 17% this year, right? That's not how values work, right? And the fact of the matter is that there are certain factors that can lead to some neighborhoods outperforming others slightly in any given year when it comes to property values. But for the most part, values across the different neighborhoods in Ottawa tend to move in a pretty synchronized fashion, right? I get asked all the time, well, what neighborhood should I buy? I want to buy a neighborhood that appreciates. They all tend to perform more or less the same. If values across the city are up 10% next year, chances are that your home is going to have appreciated by about 10%, could be 10.5, it could be 9.5, regardless of where you live. And so when you're choosing a neighborhood, forget articles like this, forget trying to think about what the next hot neighborhood, where the value is going to shoot up. Just find a neighborhood that's right for you. Right. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions about which neighborhood might be right for you or anything else real estate related for that matter, we set up a really cool Calendly link. You can see it in the description of this video. It gives you direct access to my calendar and you can book a strategy session with me. You can book a buyer consultation or a seller consultation, again, directly using the link in this video. I'd be happy to chat. If you've watched this video up until this point, thank you. I hope you found it interesting, and if you did, it would mean the world to me if you would like it, share it, and if you'd subscribe to my channel. That about does it for this one. I'm Serge Papineau. See you on the next one.